Hello guys, so this video is the first video in a series of videos we'll be producing, which tackles most of the popular questions that new developers ask, when they start programming, when they start their development journey, right? So the question we have here is, what is the difference between front end, back end, and full stack development? This front end back end stuff is something that just puts new developers away. Like, what is going on here? What is front end? What is back end? What is full stack? So without wasting much time, let's jump into it and let me explain to you what these three terms mean. All right. Now, before you understand full stack development, you first need to understand front end development and then understand back end development. Then we'll bring it together, right? So, what is front end development? Basically, front end. When we say the front end of an application, right? It's the part of an application where your users will be interacting with, right? So your forms, your pictures, your designs, your CSS, all the cool stuff, your buttons, all that stuff that your users actually interact with and click and drag and drop, and then all that stuff that constitutes the front end of your application. Okay, and so we have front end developers whose job is to do that, right? And in a web application, front end is like your web pages, your HTML files. In a mobile app, the front end can be the various screens in the mobile app and all. But technically, when we talk about front end development in the industry, we usually mean front end web developers, right? We don't usually consider front end developers as mobile. For mobile developers, we call them mobile app developers or Android developers or iOS developers, right? But technically, the parts that you interact with in any application is the front end. All right, yeah. So in the front end development industry, okay, even then we have people like the UI UX designers who are solely responsible for making sure that the system looks good, right? They design it, they use tools like Figma and all those things, Photoshop and stuff like that to sort of mock up the whole UI, how it will look, how it should feel like, the user experience journey from beginning to end, right? Then there are the developers who by themselves now take the design that has been done by the UI guys and then they implement it in code, right? They implement it in code. So, we have front-end developers who double as UI developers or UI designers, right? And we have UI designers too who double as front-end developers. But sometimes things can get really complicated, such that like your workload can be very high, or in this industry, it's usually really hard to combine two fields at a time, right? So then we have lots of people who are focusing and major narrowing on UI design, and we have those that are narrowing on the implementation, the coding part of things. But if you're a superstar, you can and you work hard enough. I'm not saying it's not possible. You can combine both scenarios. You can be a full-blown UI developer, a very good one, and then a full-blown front-end guy as well. But as a front-end person, you need to at least be able to design to a minimum extent. Like you need to have some idea about what looks good. You don't need to be totally ignorant about it. Okay, you need to learn the principles of UI design. It helps when you are interacting with UI developers on your team. When you at least know something about UI, right? It helps. And the UI developers too, if you are going to narrow down on UI development, then at least you need to also have some idea about the basic of front-end code in this HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You are not technically supposed to be like a master there, right? But then at least have an idea so that as you work on your design, you will not always be doing things that are not technically possible or feasible, right? So it helps, right? So this is front-end development. Now for back-end development, it's a part of the application that your clients do not see. All right, so the server, your APIs, all these things that are doing all the processing and doing all the logic and storing the data, and checking whether the logins match, and checking whether you are signed in, and all that kind of stuff, right? That is all backend development. So for example, a user goes to YouTube, clicks on a video. All they know is that they are clicking on the video. As to how the video is fetched, as to how the video is streamed, as to where the comments are stored, and where the likes and all that stuff of a video are stored, they do not care. All they know is that they click a subscribe button, and then they are subscribed to the channel, and it's in their list of subscribers, their watch history. How everything goes on there, they have no idea. So all that logic that manages that is your backend development, right? Now, in a usual 3-tier application architecture, which I'll explain shortly, the front end communicates to the back end through what we call the API. So if you've heard of API, I just take it like a means where the back end allows the front end to sort of communicate with it, send data from it, and retrieve data from the back end as well. All right, and APIs, we call them application programming interfaces, right? So backend languages, you hear languages like PHP, Python, Django, Java, and all these guys are backend languages, right? That you can learn. Okay. Then, so for full stack development, right? So full stack development, you are sort of developing the front end, and you are developing the back end in one person. Like you do both, right? So full stack, when you're a full stack developer, it means you have the ability to build the front end from ground up, and you have the ability to build the back end infrastructure too from ground up, and then bring it all together on your own. So you are like end to end. So to be a full stack developer is not easy. It requires a lot of study, a lot of practice, a lot of experience, right? But truth of the matter is that as you go further and further into your career, you become more specialized, right? So we have something in the industry like maybe full stack developers but back end heavy, right? Or we have full stack developers but front end heavy. Okay, so if you hear something like that, it means that the person can develop the entire software from beginning to end, but they specialize more in backend, right? But it doesn't mean they don't know how to build stuff in JavaScript, or how to build the front end of the application, right? And if you hear the front end heavy too, it means they can build everything from end to end, right? But then over the course of their career, they have specialized in just the front end side of things, right? So that is full stack development. Okay, so to put this in a diagram, okay, to make this more visual, right? Let's see it this way. So typically you'd have your client application, like I said, which is the front end part of things, your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, and all that stuff. What the client sees, right? And then you have your backend server, which you've developed in PHP, Ruby, or whatever it is. Okay, and then you have your database. Your database is storing all the data, maybe of your users. So in the example of the PHP application, that the YouTube application I said, for example, right? Now all the videos are stored in a database. Your watch history, your library, your watch later, all that stuff, all those records are stored in a database, right? So anytime you click on a video to look at it, now your backend does some processing, and then it fetches this data from you from the database, right? So the people that make this work, all right, are the backend engineers or the backend developers, right? And just like in front end, we have people that specialize in the UI parts of things, and those that specialize in the coding parts of things. In back-end development too, going further, you end up having people that then start to specialize in the database side of things. So you have like database administrators, and you have the back-end server developers, right? So it gets tricky at that point, right? But then you as the back-end developer needs to have an idea of everything that is going on here in this side of things. All right, so in a typical team, you have your front-end developers and UI guys who are making sure that this part of the application looks good. You have your back-end engineers, your network administrators, and all those people who are making sure that the back-end side of things, the data stores of the software, and everything is working perfectly. All right, so these are the guys that do that. So as you progress in your career, you develop a passion for these different sectors of the application architecture, right? For me for example, I started as a full stack guy, but over the course of my career, I realized that I'm really passionate about the backend side of things, right? So I have narrowed down like crazy over there, all right? So I'm learning a lot about databases, back-end networking infrastructure. I'm learning about the cloud, server application, more back-end languages. So you'd hardly find me doing work in the front end, right? Except when I'm building my own application, my own personal project or something where I need to build everything on my own, and I don't really have a front end guy separately. Then I just pop back into the front end and do what I have to do there. But then I prefer playing here. I prefer sleeping here. This is why I live and breathe. Okay, so it's going to be the same for you, right? As you go on, as you dabble in the entire stack, right, you begin to see which portion of the stack actually works for you, and then you begin to bias towards that area. Okay, now let's use another analogy to explain the whole front-end, back-end, database stuff, development stuff, right? So this is like an analogy of a light switch, in a power supply company, right? A power company. So the light switch and then the bulb that you see in your room is what you interact with. Okay, you just go into your room and then turn on the switch. So the switch is like the front end that you interact with, right? But behind the switch, okay, is like a whole lot of wiring and relays and fuse boxes and all that stuff, some red green cables and metals and conductors and all that behind the switch. Okay, and these things are what makes it possible. Okay, it processes the power that is being supplied from the power company and makes it possible for you to see your light. Okay, so these switches and all are sort of connected to your power company, right, in some way with the main wiring of your house. Okay, so the power supply company is sort of like the data warehouse, your database. Okay, they actually store all the power. That power is like maybe a nation or the city or whatever it is. They have all the connections to all the homes, and all that stuff, right? So then your switch behind the scenes, your cables behind the scenes are communicating with this data warehouse, right? But you, the house owner, you don't care about all this, right? You don't know what's going on. All you know is that you turn on your switch and you get your light. Okay, so it's the same thing. You go on a software, you visit a website, whatever it is, you click a button, you click sign in, you click sign up, or whatever you are doing on that platform, and you get your results done. But as to whatever processing is going on behind the scenes, whatever is happening behind the scenes, you have zero idea of what's happening. Okay, so the people that make the switch look good, the bulb look good, and all that stuff, your lights, whether you have a red light or green light or whatever it is, they are the front end guys. Okay, and the guy that comes in to come and check when you have faulty wiring and all that stuff is your backend guy. Okay, and then the backend guy could also probably be working for the power company as well, right? So, or we can have dedicated people who are working the power company, that kind of stuff. So you get the idea, right? So this has been a simple breakdown of the of what a front-end engineer is, what back-end development is, and what full stack development is. So if you like this video, please remember to subscribe, because we are bringing a whole lot of videos like this, for newbies that are now starting their development career, and there are some questions that bug you here and there. Hey, don't worry, we got you covered. Okay, and if you have any questions or any confusions that you want to have to help you answer, you can tell us that in the comments, and we'll take a look at it, review it, and if possible, produce content on it, especially to help others as well. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.